Trim and Extend tool, they are both updated in AutoCAD 2021 version, and now these tools are very streamlined. So the trim tool will basically trim the geometry and it will cut it up to the next boundary, and the extend tool will work in opposite way. So to explain this, I've used this drawing, and here this is a very simple drawing where I have a lot of these extra geometries that I need to clean up. So many times this kind of thing happens that you just end up making drawings and you just need to clean it up. So in order to do that cleanup work, you can select the trim command from the modify panel, which is right here. So in the modify panel, go to trim tool right here. Now here you just need to start clicking on the edges that you want to trim. So in this case, the first thing that I want to trim here is this big circle. I don't want this, so I'm going to click here, and again I'll click here. Now these are the two parts that got trimmed up to the next boundary. So in a similar way, if I click right here on this line, it will trim up to the next boundary, which is basically this line. So when it finds a boundary, it will just trim it up to the next boundary. Also, if you have multiple edges to trim, you don't need to click on all of these edges one by one. You can just click and hold your cursor, left click in this case, and then move it up, and then keep making this kind of fence, and it will just trim all of those extra boundaries. You can also click and let go your cursor and then make a straight fence, and then click again to trim all of those extra boundaries. So you can follow any of these workflows to trim extra geometries. Now let's see how trim command works in AutoCAD 2020 and all the older versions. So again, I have the same drawing, and in this case, I'll go to the trim command, and I'm using AutoCAD 2020, but the same workflow will be applicable if you are using even older versions of AutoCAD. Now I'll go to trim, and in this case, if I hover my cursor over any object, look at this, it won't highlight the part which will be trimmed. And even if I click, it won't trim that. It will simply select the geometry. So what do we need to do here? So let me first press escape, and once again, I'll go to trim command. Now look at the command line. In this case, the command line prompts you to select an object. So basically you need to specify a boundary or a trimming object, and that object will be selected as a trimming boundary, and objects will be trimmed with respect to that boundary. What I mean to say is this. In this case, I will just zoom into this area, and here I will select this arc as an object. So I'll just select it, and now let's press enter. So this arc is now highlighted, and now if you click on any geometry, then it will be trimmed up to this arc. So if I click here, it will ignore every boundary including these two lines, and it will only trim this object up to this arc. So if I click, it's going to trim it like this. So that's how the older versions of AutoCAD used to work, and as you can see, there are many more steps, and that's why it has been streamlined now in AutoCAD 2021. So in this case, if you want your command to work exactly like the 2021 version of AutoCAD, then you can follow this workflow. So just go to trim command. And obviously, you know that if you click, you won't be able to trim up to the next boundary. So if you want it to work like 2021, select trim command and directly press enter. When you directly press enter without selecting any object, AutoCAD selects all the boundaries, all the objects as a potential trimming boundary. That's because select all is in the angle bracket, and that's the default option. So I'll press enter, and now every object is a boundary. And all I need to do is just hover my cursor and keep on clicking, and now it will work like the 2021 version of trim command. So in older versions, if you just want to use the same workflow of trim command, then you need to select the trim tool and directly press enter key. So this is the thing which you need to take care of. Now, if you want to trim multiple boundaries using the older versions of trim, then you can follow this workflow. So go to trim, and in this case, you just directly cannot make a fence. Obviously, you need to start trim and then press enter first in order to select every single object as a boundary. Now you can make a window. So click at a point and then make this kind of window, and that will let you trim objects. Obviously, this is not very straightforward or direct method, but still it's better than nothing. Now, if you still want to use fence, then we have an option right here on the command line. So click on fence, and now you can make fence just like the latest 2021 update. In 2021 update, this fence is directly accessible, but in this case you need to select it from the command line, and that's the only difference. Once you're done trimming it, press enter, and the objects crossed by the fence are now trimmed. To exit the command, press enter or escape key. Now let's talk about extend tool. For the extend tool, I'll make a circle here, and I'll just make sure that this circle is bigger than this one. And now I'll extend all of those geometries once again. The trim tool and extend tool are kind of opposite of one another, so you can find the extend tool right here. So when you click here, this arrow right next to the trim tool, you'll see this kind of fly out where we have the extend tool right here. So click on extend, and now again for 2021 version, all you need to do is just select an object and that will be extended up to the next boundary. So in this case, I'll just click on this arc, and look at this, it will now extend up to the next boundary. And if you look closely, the next boundary is this line. It's not this line, actually there is a gap between these two, so it will just extend it only up to this line and not to this one. So we still have an arc. If you try extending it any further, it won't, because if it extends further, it will become a complete circle. That's not possible. So it will just extend it and it will keep an arc here. Also, if I just click here, it will once again extend it up to the next boundary, which is right there. If I click here, next boundary, if I click again, next boundary, and so on. Here also you can see the same thing happening. So click and it will just extend to the next boundary. If I try clicking here again, it won't extend because it has no boundaries further to extend. So that's the extend command. Now just like trim, you can extend multiple objects as well. So just click and move your cursor and make a fence, and once again it will just extend here. So here it is, I just clicked and it just extended it further. Now if you want to convert trim into extend and extend command into trim, then press and hold your shift key. Right now, as you can see, I am in the extend tool, so I'll just press and hold my shift key, and now if I click on this object, look at this, extend command will work like trim, and the vice versa is also true. So if I select trim command now, it will obviously trim the geometry, but now if I press and hold my shift key, that trim will convert into extend. And if I now click, it will just extend the geometry. So it will do the opposite. So just like trim command, extend command also works in a similar way in older versions of AutoCAD. So from 2020 up to any old version, the extend command workflow is slightly different. So again, I have the same drawing and I'll go to extend here. And in this case, I'm using AutoCAD 2020 and it will be applicable for 2020 and all the older versions. So now once I have the extend command active, if I hover my cursor over any object, it won't directly extend it up to the next boundary, because we need to specify a boundary once again if we want to extend it further. In this case, we have only one boundary, so let's make a new boundary first. So I'll just press escape key and I'll go to circle and I'll just make one more boundary just like this. Now we have two boundaries. So let's go to extend and let's now select an object, because that's what command line prompts us. So I'll select this circle which is outside and I'll press enter key. Now if we select any object, it will extend up to that circle. So if I click here, it will extend here. If I click here, it will extend up to this circle. So it's completely ignoring the circle which is right before that, and that's because we have selected this circle as a boundary. So I'll press escape and once again I'll select the extend command. And in this case, if you don't want to select any specific boundary and want to use every object as a boundary, then directly press enter. And now if you click on any object, it will extend up to the next boundary. Click again to extend it further. If I click again, it won't extend it any further because we don't have a boundary now. Now here is a special situation related to extend tool. So I've got this line here, and if you look at this line, if you just look closely, it is highlighting from this point to this. Now this line will extend either to the left or to the right, and that depends on the point where we click. So if I click close to this endpoint, and in order to explain this, maybe we'll just move this line here. Now that looks good. So here we'll just extend it. So once again, I'll go to extend and I'll press enter key. Now, if I click close to this endpoint, it will extend it towards here. If I click close to this endpoint, it will extend it close to this one, and it will extend it towards this one. And there is no way we can click exactly at the center because that's not humanly possible. It will be slightly to the left or slightly to the right. So depending on the point where we click, it's going to extend it towards that side. And that's how the extend command works. So I'll now press escape key, and this was all about the trim and extend command in AutoCAD 2021 as well as in older versions.